What is going on, Eazyy gang? I will highly appreciate if you guys can go to the link in the description to go follow my brand new mixer. We are trying to get a partnership over there. I will be doing all my streaming on Mixer from now on. So if you guys could, I will highly appreciate if you guys can give me a follow. Once again, that link will be in the description, and I'm out.
Shit, this 1,000. Spin that shit. Spin that shit. Spin that shit. You coming? Spin the check and get it right back.
What's going on, guys? This your boy Eazyy TV, bringing you guys another Division 2 video. Today, I just want to talk about the PTS Wave 2 patch notes. If you guys haven't seen already, they just dropped some more patch notes this morning with some more changes. I just had a very lit stream earlier today. Had about 100+ people. We talked about all the patch notes things in the game. I gave my feedback. Everybody else gave their feedback. And I just want to go over the patch notes with people who haven't seen them already or it didn't even watch the stream. There are a lot of changes coming. And me personally, these are, I'm just going to say these are not final changes, but we're basing this off of what we have at hand right now. Me personally, once again, like I said, I don't think TU6 is going to last very long with the changes that we have, but they do have some good changes and then they have some bad changes. I will also say this, the buffs that you guys think we're getting, they're not really buffs in a sense. They're really nerfs. So if you don't read the fine print, which I'm going to break down what I mean, if you don't read the fine print of what's actually going on with some of these unique talents that you have now, and they're putting them together and making them a bigger, a bigger one talent, but you get more of a percentage, it's really kind of nerfing stuff. So I just want to talk about that a little bit. So we're going to pick and choose stuff that we want to talk about. We're not really going to talk about everything in here because I'll put the patch notes for you guys to check yourself. But first things first, the Chem launcher. All right. This is one of the most positive things that they have made so far with the changes, especially from a PvP aspect. All right. Most of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is really going to affect PvP the heaviest, and it's going to affect PvE just a little bit. It's not going to be too much. All right. So the Chem launcher, Repair Cloud no longer repairs a hostile player's armor. This is amazing because for the DZ, ODZ, all that stuff, if you drop the Chem launcher, a Chem launcher heal or whatever the case may be, an enemy can go inside of that heal and get your heal. So if you had immaculate heals, let's say you got like 2,800 skill power with crazy amounts of heals, if you drop the heal, they would get that buff from your heal and they become basically damn near immortal. They can just run around in your heals. So kudos to the ones that, that the people at Massive actually fixed this. This should have been something that should have been implemented in the beginning of the game, but they finally got it done. All right. So the PvP changes, they show all stuff about the PvP balancing and the dark zone stuff. We talked about this in another video, the healing adjustments and all that stuff. I will let you out. Like I said, I will have a link in the description for you guys to check this out. You got your damage adjustment stuff right here, which I'm not going to talk too much about this. You guys can look at this as well. Your exotic holster. So now the Chatterbox has a nerf. While holstered, reloading your weapon within 5 seconds after a kill grants 15% down from 20%. So, it's basically a nerf. Rate of fire for 10 seconds. The Nemesis also got a nerf. While holster gain plus 15% down from 25% headshot damage when scoped with your current weapon. PvP version remains unchanged at 10%. So for PvE players, you guys got a 10%. You guys basically got a 10% reduction. All right, so you're not getting 25% no more. You're getting 15% for PvE. For people who have PvP M4, be like P416, headshot builds and stuff like that, it remains unchanged. All right. The Merciless has also gotten a buff. While holster landing a shot has a 5% chance to deal plus 100% damage up from plus 20% damage as explosive damage. All right, so the Merciless has gotten a major buff. It went from 20 to 100. You know, it has a chance to deal that amount of damage. So if you got an explosive build with the Merciless, you kind of got a buff with that build as well. The exotic talents for these, I'm not going to go over all of them, but I will go over the Pestilence, the Eagle Bearer for sure, and then the Diamondback. All right, so with the Chatterbox starting off, every shot landing grants 1% rate of fire from max up to 60. This resets on reload. Kills with this weapon refill 75% up from 20% of his magazine and grants a buff for 10 seconds. While the buff is active, every shot landed increases magazine capacity by 3, up from 1 to a max of 60. Killing a target consumes the buff to fully refill the increased magazine. So it's not too much of it's not a bad buff for the Chatterbox. Me personally, man, I think the Chatterbox should have a little bit more damage so it can be, you know, on the forefront for SMGs as using the exotic and not just for a host of talent. But it is what it is, all right? So now with the Pestilence, and this is what I talked about in my stream, and a lot of people talked about it. As of right now, from what we know and what's going on, everybody is leaning towards, or the people that I've talked to, is leaning towards the Pestilence being the best LMG in the game right now for the second wave PTS because of all the nerfs that happened to the other LMGs, and we're going to talk about that. So with the Pestilence, after hitting the enemy, same enemy 10 times, that enemy is inflicted with the Plague of the Outcast for 10 seconds. Whenever an enemy with the Plague of the Outcast is killed, they leave a toxic cloud for 10 seconds that deals 1200% up from 400 weapon damage per second to anyone inside the inside and inflicts from with the Pestilence. So what happens is this is a PvE buff, okay? So with a PvE buff, instead of the 400%, you're getting 1200%. You're getting 3 times more damage than what you would get just with the regular Pestilence. With PvP, it remains at 500. So it stays at 500. There's no buff for that. This debuff reduces healing received by 50% for 10 seconds, which is still applied to PvP as well. Whenever an enemy with the Pestilence would be down, they are instead instantly killed. So you get shot. I don't know if that was a thing before, but if you got the Pestilence and you get shot down, you're dead. Ain't no coming back. There's no, you hit the checkpoint, come back, all right? Or wherever you're going to be for if it's PvP. Pestilence is removed if the enemy is repaired to full armor. So if you hit somebody and you get the Pestilence buff and they pop a med kit or armor kit, whatever you want to call it, then it doesn't work anymore, all right? We're going to go over to the Eagle Bearer. We got an adjustment, which it ain't an adjustment. It's a nerf, all right? The Eagle Bearer, they're still sticking with their guns at 15% damage being reduced. But this is going to be the kicker, and I'm going to explain it. Headshot kills grant plus 100% reload speed, plus 50% up from 35% damage. So it got a 15% buff for tenacity. That's for tenacity. And it lasts for 10 seconds. PvP version remains at 35. So with that being said, they took the 15% base away from the Eagle Bearer, and they're making you gain the reward of the extra 15% damage through tenacity, but that only works for PvE. If you are a PvP player, we only have 35%. So the 15 that they took from us, we're not gaining it back through the tenacity perk. You're only at 35. That's it. So they took 15 for the PvP people. The 15% damage, it's not implemented. It's not applied. It's not applied to the tenacity. We don't get the tenacity buff for PvP. If you guys notice, the 15% that they took away, they're adding it to the 15% for tenacity for PvP, for PvE, excuse me. So for PvP, it remains at 35. It's not a 15 increase. So with that being said, I don't know why it's like that, or I must be misreading this. If I'm misreading this, somebody please correct me. But from what it said headshot kills grant 100% reload speed plus 50% damage and tenacity buff. PvP remains at 35. So the 15% that they're taking away from us is not being applied for PvP if you get a headshot kill. Just saying. All right, the strength of tenacity is increased by 1% for every body shot, 5% for headshots, 40 to 80 up from 20 to 80 of damage is taken delayed until the buff expires. All the total delayed damage is reduced for each enemy kill while the buff is active up to 100% with 3 down from 5 kills. All right. That's crazy. So now with the Diamondback buff, which is a PvE buff, it says Diamondback randomly marks an enemy. Hitting that enemy consumes the mark guarantee and a critical hit for plus 20% total damage. A new random target is marked afterwards, and whenever you reload, after hitting 5 marked targets, gain 50% reload speed, 20% total damage, and all shots fired are guaranteed critical hits for 10s to 15s, I'm guessing. My main concern about the Diamondback, I wish it was 20 seconds, that you had longer to hit these enemies, because I think 10 seconds was a little bit too fast. It looked like it might be going up to 15 seconds, but I wouldn't. Me personally, I would have liked 20 seconds. While drawn, each time a round is loaded, gain plus 20% up from 15% bonus armor for 3 seconds. Now, with that being said, the reload talent is giving you a buff, but there was a bug. There is a bug with the Diamondback. If you reload council and constantly reload council, even though you cannot shoot, you can get unlimited blues. So with this being said, Massive, if you're going to gain another additional 5% for armor, you need to fix this bug before this version goes live. Okay. So if you're going to make it like that, make sure that council reload bug is fixed, because it's making people immortal. Make sure it's fixed before you actually put the live version out. That's all I'm saying. All right. So for PvP with the Diamondback, headshots against players are guaranteed to critical hit and provide a stack of deep fangs. So with that being said, with the new Diamondback system for PvP, if you get hit in the head, it's going to be a critical hit. Okay? It is guaranteed a critical hit. So with that being said, you're going to see Diamondback PvP crit builds. You're going to see the rifle damage that you get from the Overlord, and then they're going to be running weapon damage. They're going to be running a blue and 2 reds on the chest piece, a blue and 2 reds on the backpack. You're going to see the critical hit damage that comes on holsters. You're going to see crit damage on holsters. You're going to see weapon damage and crit damage on chest pieces. You're going to see weapon damage and crit damage on backpacks. And what's going to happen is they're just going to go all into weapon damage and crit damage, no crit chance. And they're going to be running, especially if you're on PC, they're going to be running these headshot Diamondback crit builds. And I think these things, if I'm not mistaken, because you already automatically get an critical hit damage from rifles anyways. If you stack into a lot of critical hit damage, all right, if you stack into a lot of critical hit damage, you're probably 9 times out of 10 going to get 1 tap from this Diamondback buff if you're a PvP player. And if you run into somebody that has a lot of weapon damage and crit damage with a headshot Diamondback build, because it's guaranteed a critical hit. So the more critical hit damage you have, the more it's going to hit as a critical hit number if you shoot somebody in the face with the Diamondback. That's crazy. All right. Non-player enemies such as NPCs and player skills will still be marked randomly by Diamondback and also provide stacks on hit. All right. So now we got these are the new talents, which I've already talked about these, but we're going to go over them again, and then they just added a new one called Composure. So Spark, damaging enemies with skills or grenades, grant 15% weapon damage for 15 seconds. So I have a little bit of concern with this. All right, I have a concern with this. Even though if they keep the change for the Eagle Bearer, right, and they nerf it to 15%, my question is, it says grenades and skills. What do we mean by skills? Like, can it be the blinder? Can it be the riot foam? Can it be a seeker mine? It says damaging the enemy, not killing the enemy. And it says grenades grant. So does flame grenades count? Because if that's the case, anybody who does ODZ or any type of PvP know people spam flame grenades. Are you getting the spark buff from flame grenades? Because if that's the case, then they really didn't nerf the Eagle Bearer, because you get an additional 15% weapon damage that we have lost from the Eagle Bearer for 15 seconds. So if you're constantly spamming a skill, right? If you're constantly spamming a skill or spamming flame grenades, and it does proc from that, or proc from the Firefly, or proc from Seeker Mines, or anything like that, any type of damage, you're going to see people with Eagle Bearers running Seeker Mines, clusters, just to hit somebody to get damage, to get a 15% buff. So basically the Eagle Bearer is in nerf. It's kind of backwards how they're doing things, and I'm starting to pick up on how they're doing things, and it's kind of contradictory. You know, you take away 15% base from the Eagle Bearer and we can't use it for PvP, basically, but then you give us Spark where we can use a skill like a cluster or a regular seeker or maybe fireflies or flame grenades and get that 15% damage back for 15 seconds. That's really not nerfing the Eagle Bearer, because people are going to abuse this. Just saying. All right. So now Vigilance, gain plus 25% weapon damage, receiving damage, disables this buff for 5 seconds. I think this is one of the stupidest talents that they put in the game. Basically, you off top with Vigilance have 25% weapon damage. If you take any type of damage, you lose to 25% for 5 seconds. There's no point in that, because the name of the game is being shot and being killed. You're going to be shot by any NPC, by NPC's little race car, whatever those little remote control cars is, by a player, anything. So Vigilance, in a sense, I don't think is going to be used as much, because once you get hit, you lose to 25% damage. You have concussion, headshots grant plus 20% headshot damage for 2s, 5s. With marksman rifles, concussion can be found on the mask. It requires 7 offensives. So now with the new talent, Composure, while in cover, grants plus 10% total weapon damage. So this is what you're going to see again, and I talked about this in my stream. You're going to see people with the Eagle Bearer and the Diamondback sitting in cover. So what's going to happen is people are going to use this and put this on the knee pads. They're probably going to take off Patience or whatever the case may be, or they're going to keep on Patience and keep Composure on. And what they're going to do is they're going to sit in cover and gain an additional 10% for their Eagle Bearer for the 15% that they lost. So now their Eagle Bearer is only a nerf of 5% and not 15% if they're in cover. At the same time, if they're using Patience, they're getting a heal over and over and over. Same thing with the Diamondback. To maximize more damage with the Diamondback, with the new PvP thing, when you get headshot and it's critical hit damage, you're going to see more people hiding in cover, especially with snipers and rifles. You're going to see more people hiding in cover to get this 10% buff while they're in cover, especially with the Diamondback, to get a crit headshot. So they're going to be running weapon damage again, weapon damage and critical hit damage on the chest piece and everywhere they can get it from with the Diamondback, for especially for PvP. And then they're going to get an additional 10% weapon damage while being in cover. Just saying, it's a lot of weird stuff going on here. All right. The basic talents, they just show, gonna talk about this. The basic gear talents are changing to unique talents. So all these talents y'all see right here are becoming unique talents now. And what that means is you can only use one of each talent. You cannot get devastating on the gloves. You cannot stack devastating on the gloves and the holster now. It can only be one. But what the thing with devastating is, it's good that it works out like that because it gives you another slot where you can put something at. What happens is on this buff, which I mean what I told you guys in the beginning, these buffs are not really buffs, but then again, some of them are buffs. Devastating is really a buff. All right. But it's a buff, but then again, it's not a buff. So what happens is you only get devastating probably once again on the holster and the gloves. So what's going to happen is devastating used to be, or right now is 5%. So if you had devastating on the gloves and the holster together, that's 10%. Now they're making it to where devastating basically for the gloves and the holster is together. So you only get it on one piece and then you can use another piece for something else. That's not bad. But this is where it gets bad for me. Okay. This is where it goes out the window. So with hard hitting, you get 25% instead of 10%. Now, if you look at your builds on all pieces of gear, you can get the talent hard hitting right now in TU5. So you can get off top on all pieces of gear, 60%. Okay. 60% on damage to elites if you get hard hitting on all pieces of gear. Now you only get it on one piece of gear for only 25. But then y'all gonna be like, well, Eazyy, that's not, it's all put together. Y'all got to think about it like this. You can get, I think the max is 55%. Okay. You can get 55%, I believe, on the mask. Like if you do like an aces and eights and something like that. So you can do 55% max. And then you can put right now an additional 10% on each piece, which all pieces are six pieces. That's an additional 60%. So you're looking at 115% damage to elites. And that's not including the damage to elites that you can put on your mods, on your guns, or on mods on your gear. That's just what you can have as a talent and then a red attribute on the mask. So now what happens is now with this talent change is, let's say you get 55% max on the mask. Now you only get an additional 25%, which is that one piece. So you're looking at 80% damage to elites, which is still not bad, but it's not really a buff how they say it's a buff. It's not a buff. It's really a nerf. It's really a nerf in a sense. Yes, you might have actually buffed the percentage that you get for hard hitting, but over the way that you guys have put it together where you can't get all 6 and you can only get 1, it's really a nerf. So let's say you got that, you know, the mask and then hard hitting as one talent. That's your 80%. And then you got, you know, your stuff, you get 8%. You get 13, an additional 13% from like the mods. You're looking at 93%, which is not bad. But once again, it's a nerf. It's not a buff. So you're losing damage to elite from the old way, and the new way is not really a buff. It's a nerf. All right. The same thing goes for Harden. Harden cannot be on the chest piece and the backpack anymore. It cannot be on the chest piece in the backpack anymore, which in a sense is still it's not really a buff. It's really just them putting 2 type of slots all together in one. So instead of the 10% that you get 20%. And that 20% was really put together from 10% from the chest piece and the backpack. So the chest piece can get 10%, the backpack can get 10%. Add that together, that's the 20%, but they just nerfed it, put it together into where you only get 20%. So it's not really a buff. It's the same thing. They just making you use different stuff in different type of builds. So I can see what they're doing in a sense, all right? And destructive, the same way. Now, destructive is, I have basically, the highest that I've hit on a cluster is like 2.3 million on one cluster. I did that live on stream, and I really like the skill power build that I have now, okay? With destructive, you're losing explosive damage. Now, from what I heard, they're buffing Seeker Mines, but the Seeker Mine buff does not compensate the damage that you're losing from explosive damage. So in a sense, it's still a nerf. So let's go here. I want to change scenes real quick so I can show you guys exactly what I'm talking about here, all right? So right now, I have on, this is my damage build, all right? And as you guys can see, you get 20% for destructive. So it's 20, 40, 60, 80. I have 80%, but destructive now only gives you 40 for one slot. So you can't get 40, 40, 40, 40, 40. You only can get one piece of destructive, and that's 40. So now my build is cut by 40%. I lost 40% destructive explosive damage on this build with the new updates, if you guys understand what I'm saying. So yes, you get 40%. It's so-called a buff, but it's not a buff. You get 40% for destructive, which is 20% now, but that can be 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. You can get 20 on all pieces, but that's just in sake for my build. I have 20, 40, 60, and 80. With the new update, if I try to use this build, I won't have 80. I only have 40. So it's not a buff. It's really a nerf once again. All right. So let's go back to the patch notes. So now, once again, that's just, it's different stuff that's all up in here. You guys can look at it if you want to. We're going to go over to gear talents. On the ropes has been nerfed. For PvE, they only lost 10%. For PvP, we lost 15%. Creeping Death has a buff. Status effects spread to the nearest enemy within 25 meters up into 10 meters. Can occur every 5 seconds, down from 15. And with the PvP, it says status effects spread to the nearest enemy within 10 meters. Can occur every 5 seconds, down from 15 seconds. So for the people who are new to Division 2, this is basically shrapnel from Division 1. Okay. This is basically shrapnel. With what we had in Division 1 was a gear set called Predator's Mark. And if you ran a 6-piece Predator's Mark, all you had to do was put 10 bullets on somebody and they get a bleed effect. If you ran shrapnel, there was a chance if you hit that person 10 times and got a bleed effect, if he was around other teammates without you having to shoot them, it will go over to them as well. That's what it is. The bleed will affect them without you even having to shoot them. It would just go over to them. And this is where I think a lot of the pred thing is finna rise. If you guys haven't already, go to my community post. You're going to see a 2-piece ongoing directive right now gives you, I think, 23 or 25% bleed damage. So people are going to be running basically a new Predator's Mark build. They're going to be running Creeping Death. They're going to be running Sadist. They're going to be running 2-piece ongoing directive, and they're going to be running Wicked to get like this damage, status effect, bleed, and they're going to be running Kneecapped as well, which Kneecap give you bleed damage. And basically we're going to have another pred meta from like Division 1. That's exactly what's about to happen. Spotter got a nerf from PvE. It went from 20 to 15, so they lost 5%. And for PvP players like myself, we got 10%, which basically they basically nerfed it into the ground. All right. Like I said, Kneecap right here is the bleed that I was talking about. This can occur for PvE. It happens once every 30 seconds, and you can bleed them for 10 seconds. And then for PvP, it happens once every 30 seconds. Shooting the enemy in the leg applies bleeds for 5 seconds. So it's not as long. But my question is, can you rinse the bleed off in this game? I'm not sure. Unbreakable has a nerf. All right. PvE is unchanged, but for PvP, it went from 25 to 5. But this is the thing. The max armor is repaired when your armor is depleted. Armor kits used within the next 7 seconds are not consumed. Now, I don't know if that's a new thing because I never use Unbreakable, but what happens is, let's say the Unbreakable procs and then you use a med kit, okay? The med kit is good. As soon as if you get shredded again between that time and 6 seconds after, 7 seconds in total, if you try to pop an armor kit, you're not going to get the armor kit. It's going to be an invisible armor kit. So you're going to be like, damn, I popped the armor kit, but it didn't work. Yeah, because you can't get it between that 7 seconds. Now, 8 seconds and up, then you can go ahead and get that med kit. But if you try to use a med kit in between that time, you might as well kiss it goodbye. Bloodsucker as well. No PvE changes, PvP changes. Depleting the enemy's armor adds a stack to 15. It went down from 20. Bonus armor for 5 seconds stack. Max is 2, down from 5. So Bloodsucker has been nerfed as well. Calculated, terminate, you have all that stuff that has little buffs and stuff like that. I don't really use these, but you know, it is what it is. I like this buff right here, close and personal. Killing the target within 7 meters grants 50% weapon damage for 10 seconds, up from 5-second. PvP now uses PvE values. I actually like close and personal on SMGs, and even like the F2000. I like close and personal, so that's a good buff right there. Spike has also been buffed. It's been unchanged for PvE, but for PvP, headshot kills grant 70%, up from 35% skill damage for 20 seconds. So the skill damage that they took away from stuff like explosive damage and all that stuff, now they're trying to make you use Spike more often to get that buff back just from using Spike, but it's only for 20 seconds. All right. What else we have? Premeditated has been completely nerfed into the ground. It says weapon damage is increased for every shell loaded to maximum of 75%, up from 35, which is okay. If all shells are reloaded, the weapon damage is increased by an additional 10%, down from 50. So that has a major nerf, major nerf. All right, so these are all the buffs and nerfs that we're getting for assault rifles. The ACR has a 3% buff. The AUG has a 3% buff. The Carbon 7 has an 8% buff. The F2000 has a 5% buff. The FAL has a 3% buff. The G36 has a 3% buff as well. And then it has less damage drop off past optimal range. The M4 has 10% damage buff as well. I wish we can go ahead and make the lightweight M4 in a complete automatic if we can. And now this is going to piss a lot of people off. The P416, it ain't a buff. So that's wrong. The P416 has gotten a nerf, and it has been by negative 5% damage decrease, which I don't understand what was the problem with the P416. I never had a problem with the P416. I thought it was a good weapon, especially if you're running with the Nemesis and like a headshot build, but they nerfed it. So the people who P416 and damage is increased by 5%. All right. The TAR 21 is also increased by 8%. Light machine guns, the HK got a buff 9%. The KAG got a 5%. The M249, it got a nerf. It went down. This is one of my favorite LMGs. It got a 4% buff, decrease, which I don't understand why that's a thing, but that happened. The M60 got a 10% damage decrease, which I don't understand why. The Eagle Bears was everything everybody was running. M60 had their time to shine, but the Eagle Bears are what run everything, and y'all nerfed the M60. I don't get it. But like I once said, again in a part of the video, that the Pestilence, from what I heard, is the best LMG in its class now because of what it does and the nerfs that happen here. So the RPK got a buff of 5%. The SA80 got a buff of 6%, and then the rifles, M700 got a 19% buff. M700 Carbon got a 19%. Classic M44 Carbon got a 14%. The Hunt M44 got an 8%. The custom M44 got a buff of 19%, and the SRS got a buff of 11. So these are good things that are happening with the update as well, that they're buffing other stuff, but then they're nerfing major stuff as well. So it's like, what's actually going on? Rifles are mostly getting a buff. All of these got an increase except for the SIG. The SIG is the one that got a negative damage. I said negative damage, a -7, and I didn't really hear nobody complaining about the SIG, which I don't know why they did that, but it is what it is. So the MDR got a buff, the LVOA, the M4, all these have gotten a buff. The MK17, from what I heard, is godlike from the buff and the PTS. And then submachine guns is my thing. Most of these got buffed. The only thing that got nerfed is the T821. The T821 was almost on par with LMGs, really, really strong. But the Vectors, Tommy gun, UMP, the P90 especially, look at this. The MPX, 38% increase. These things got increased. For the guys who don't know Patrick Wolf was in the chat earlier today talking about the MPX, and he said that SMGs are king right now in the PTS. So SMGs might be back. All right. So this is just wave 2 of what we're talking about. I will leave the link in the description. Y'all let me know what y'all think, man. Will this save Division? Will TU6 save Division? Me personally, I only think it's going to save it for like a month, maybe 2 at the max. If they really want to save Division, they need to bring changes like this, rework some of the changes, and they need to bring along content like Survival with it. And I think it's going to bring a large amount of the player base back. But I just want to hear you guys' feedback. Like I said, I don't whine really about anything or call for nerfs or anything like that. But if you're new to the channel, man, make sure you hit that sub button. Make sure you hit the notification button so you guys know when I go live or drop any type of content. It's your boy Eazyy TV, and I'm out.